This is the Bonus Section Podcast, episode number 46, The Fine Art of Listening. Are you the type of person that knows you were meant for something greater in this lifetime, and that somewhere inside of you, there's just this bigger version of yourself trying to break free? But in spite of all this self-development, you just can't seem to find the way up towards your goals? Well, then, hey, you're definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the Bonus Section and the host of this podcast, and a person just like you, trying to learn how to live the most fulfilling life possible. Now, to help you take immediate action to get moving in a better direction, we take all the notes from each episode and we post them for a short period of time over at freethinkingtools.com. That's freethinkingtools.com. That way, you can take the notes, go get a cup of coffee, sit down and think onto some paper and try to get a little bit more organized as to helping you come up with a goal and a plan to achieve that goal. All right, in this episode, I want to talk about something very interesting to me, which is going to sound ironic to you, and that is the fine art of listening. And you're going to say to yourself, well, wait a minute, this is a monologue podcast and all you do is talk at us. And I've seen you online and you're a coach and you talk and you talk and you talk. Yes. But ironically, behind the scenes, I'm probably much more of known as an extroverted introvert. I like my quiet time. And I actually do a lot of listening, whether it be audiobooks, whether it be educational videos, whether it be listening to other people talk about business. I do a lot of listening. And in my own business, when I'm coaching somebody, I have to do a lot of listening because I have to hear what their challenges, what their wins are. So I do a lot of listening when you don't see me in this mode. But I will say the first point is this. Listening is very hard to do and to become predominantly a listener first, but it is everything. And when I say it's everything, what I mean by that is what I've learned from becoming a good listener is that there is so much to learn. There's so much to discover that I get it. We want to matter. That's the whole point here, right? Everybody wants to matter. So we're always selling. And take it from a coach who does a lot of sales training. We fall down this trap of always trying too hard, the tryhards. We're trying so hard to make our case to matter. I mean, there are billions of us in this world. And it seems so overwhelming to think that you're just one individual and you want to matter. So the default to letting people know that you matter is to speak, to make noise, to do something that's about us. To say, please don't forget me, please recognize me. And that's what we interpret the way to obviously go get love is to proactively go get it. And because everybody wants to be loved. At the end of the day, I don't care how tough you think you are. We all want to be loved. That's just part of the human condition. We want to belong. Don't believe me? Put any one of you into isolation. Let's see how that one goes. So we need the love, the caring, the community, the interaction with other humans. It's just the way we're wired. So instead of barking and yelling to try to get that attention and muscling our way, which, by the way, plenty of people do. You see it in all sorts of venues, different types of leaders or politicians or business owners or just anybody, a crazy in the middle of a park trying to get attention. Everybody's making noise. And if anything, that repels the majority of people, or even if it does win in the short term, it's the short term. So when people are listened to, they feel appreciated. They feel like they matter. And in turn, you get what you wanted, which is the very attention and appreciation and love that you wanted. So there's the crazy irony. So that's why I'm saying, to me, listening is everything. So let's just break down a couple of points here. The first point is why. Listening educates. Listening educates. Think about it. As a kid, you go to school and there's a teacher at the front of the room and you're listening because you're forced to listen. So that's why a lot of kids can't stand school. Me, I had ants in my pants when I was a kid. I mean, you talk about ADD. I wanted to learn kinesthetically, physically. You know, I was all about sports and activity. But when I think back to great moments in school for me, when I really started to listen to the teacher, it was fascinating what I was learning. I had the opportunity to listen to my son's Jack, his class. He was listening to a history class. And now that I'm older, I hear history about the United States when a lot was changing And there were all sorts of things happening with the Depression and all of the changes that happened in the party of Roosevelt versus the party of Lincoln, and how all of those things shifted and changed. There were massive things happening. It's fascinating history because it affects how we live to this very day. So by listening to these stories and these events that happened, it's stunning what we learn. And, that never stops. I mean, a lot of us feel like, oh, geez, I missed that history class. I don't remember everything. We all shrink down. Go learn it today. Go listen to an audio about history of whatever you like. Art history. This fast, by the way. Fell in love with that class my senior year in college. Loved it so much. It was a requirement where I went to school. I took it the second half as a voluntary class. And the next thing you know, I'm sitting in the Louvre looking at the stuff that I studied that summer. Stunning what I learned by listening and going deeper into these worlds and by the way, my prejudices are my predispositions, all of the things that would cloud the lens, they really came from talking at people and my agenda. And I just make a decision and I'm only going to go listen to the stuff that I want to listen to. So see, listening is about broadening what you're listening to. I'm not saying that by nature, we all have to listen to something. And if we're interested in something, we're going to listen about that thing. But also it's like open the door more. Listen to things that you might not think you're interested in. Now, there are things I'm certain I'm not interested in. At this point in life, I know that in going through a licensure exam to get another real estate license in another state, there's parts of it I'm like, why am I studying this? This is not even what we really do in my business. This is something that this person does. And so I'm turned off. So I fight through it. And I listen to the videos and I do the best I can. So I understand that we're going to have to make some editing to our listening. I understand it's not going to be that we're going to listen to everything or we're going to go pursue it. But I am just suggesting that maybe you just broaden your horizon a little bit. You listen a little bit more to become more educated. But let me go into something also that I was talking to Jack about deeply. This is not just listening about things that we might be interested in, but listening to the people. That's really where this education begins. How many of you really listen to other people? Start off with the people closest to you. Fish off the dock, like I like to say. Do you listen to the people that you live with, that are your closest friends, that you work with? Do you really know anything about them? Have you ever asked them a provocative question about their life or what matters to them and then really listened and gone on the journey with somebody that you think you know and you really don't? We live in a world that is always prejudiced and racially charged, politically charged, whatever. Pick a subject, pick a side, and you get differences of opinions and pathways in life. And we don't know anything really about a lot of the people that are around us. So over the past couple of years, a lot of these challenges have come to the surface. They've bubbled up. And if you listen to history, you know a lot of the ugly history. I'm going to talk about the United States. There's some ugly history. The way that people treated each other is ugly. And what that did systemically to us is still echoing hundreds of years later. And it doesn't stop because around the world, there is challenge. Around the world, there is suffering. And we live in such a world where it's easy enough to move around the world once you can get out of the horrific situation you're in and arrive in somebody else's backyard and arrive in the same classroom. And we see each other and we don't really know anything about each other. We never ask. So Jack's sitting in school the other day and they have a day that's, I think they refer to it as inclusion. And people have a chance to tell their story. And by the way, this is an idea that young Jack Griffin had for a club to start this, to continue it, not just out of the crisis of the moment, but what happens, because he and I talk about this a lot, what happens when everything quiets down? What happens when everything's not at a crescendo pitch anymore? Now what happens to all of those challenges? Where'd they go? Was there any solution? So he and I were talking about that, and I said, what about just a club that exists at the school? Why don't you start a club? Why don't you go out and take that entrepreneurial brain of yours and start a club around listening, where everybody, not just a minority who we presume is the only suffering party, what is the perspective and the delusion of the majority versus the minority? And what do those stories look like if they're just told? No agenda, no judgment, no solution even, no splaining, as they say to each other. How about you just tell me about you, and we just let that linger in the air, and we listen. And then we just have our own personal experience about that, what that means. And then the next person does it, and the next. And everybody in the club has a chance to speak about their story. Then if it's appropriate to discuss, or there's a debate that comes out of it, fine. I'll leave that to all of the rest of you too. But just start with listening. And that starts with giving somebody else a chance to talk about their story. And then you will get educated in ways that you just will be mind blown. And that happened to Jack. He had no idea that a kid in his class had come from halfway around the world in a difficult situation to end up in a desk next to him. He had no idea. Kid could have been from the neighborhood right down the street, until he listened and got educated and got mind blown. You see, the next point is, when you get educated like that about other people, their story, their journey, listening then creates empathy. And now empathy is a tricky thing. Could be sympathy, but empathy is when I feel what you feel. You take me so deep, and this is what great stories and by the way, it doesn't have to be a professional actor who brings me into the story. It can be, in fact, those people have a harder time than somebody authentically telling you their story. You fall into it where you can feel what they feel. Now, I'm not saying you know what they know. You'll never know. You've never walked in their shoes. But all of a sudden, there's an empathy. You're drawn so deeply into the story that something inside you is changing. I'll make an argument that's empathy. I'm no empathy expert, but I will tell you, I've felt that many times before. I work in a business where we help people with the single largest emotional transaction in their life: housing, home, sense of shelter. That's a big deal. And I have literally been brought to an emotional state, feeling this person's feelings as they go through this and they talk to me about it and what it means and what it will mean if we can get it done. I feel this empathy. And when you feel somebody else's soul beating inside yours, or it touches a part of yours you didn't know existed, that's changing you forever. And when you can be empathetic and you can start to develop that through listening. So listening is creating a more educated person, creating a more empathetic person. Things are really changing for you. Because now when you're just walking around every day, you don't make the assumptions. You don't have the same prejudices. That's just part of the process. See, what's fascinating to me is this is always a sensitive subject. And you can feel me kind of dancing around it because I have no political agenda, no race agenda. I have a human agenda. I'm just trying to figure this stuff out for myself. And I'm telling you, in my experience, when I became somebody who worked on the fine art of listening, I became better educated. Didn't have anything to do with a classroom. It had everything to do with listening to the stories of people. Then I got more empathetic and more empathetic. It's always been on my soul to be a person for others. That's what the bonus section is, a true endeavor to serve. But as you become these things, here's the final point here. What you're developing in yourself is a sense of leadership. Now, you might not fashion yourself a leader, and you might immediately hear that and say, well, I don't want to be anybody's leader. Okay, how about just becoming a better leader of your own life? You know you want, we started this off, you know you want to matter. You know you want your life to matter. You know, you want to pass through this life and not be accounted for and not have put a dent in it in a positive way. Everybody wants that somewhere deep in their soul, unless there's really something wrong with their wiring. We want that. So what's developing is a better way that I can see my life, that when I see myself, when you see yourself at the end, whenever the end comes, even if you have a small window of time where your life flashes in front of you, were you able to lead yourself in a better direction? Were you more educated? Were you more empathetic? And in turn, did that magnetize love your way? Did people appreciate you because of that sort of behavior? Did you feel more connected? I mean, I heard Warren Buffett say this the other night. I mean, here's one of the wealthiest guys in the world, one of the most successful investors in the history of time, and they're doing an interview on the things that were most important to him. And he thought for the rest of us, and he says the same thing. He said, really, like, success is if you can have the people around you really love you. In other words, the implication is, how did we treat those people that were closest to us? And then if you want to be a leader outside of your small circle and yourself, and you want to take this concept further, and I do as an entrepreneur, I want to be that kind of a leader. I want to be known as that person who's listening and becoming more educated and more empathetic. I'm hearing it. Look, I'm no shrinking violet. Somebody has to be the captain of the ship. I'm not afraid to then reinsert my concepts, my authority, whatever it might be, and be bold enough to lead. But really, if you can do it with a heart and a soul and not be attached to always winning at all costs and always about money, or this is ridiculous, all the good stuff, or the trappings of life, the money, the riches. And listen to anybody who truly has gone through this process and developed themselves this way, a self-developed way. Most of those people are trying to give their money away. Most of those people are going to the next level of what all that leadership success has given them. And they're trying now to really go solve some big problems, right? Pretty cool. So let me just summarize this way. The subject on the table is the fine art of listening. First point was, it's hard to do, listen, but it's everything. Why? Because the second point is, listening educates. And you can listen your entire life, presuming you have your mental capacity intact. You can listen forever. So you're always becoming educated by listening. And as you're doing that, the third point was, you're creating an empathetic persona. And that empathetic persona is magnetically attractive. And that magnetic attraction is appreciation, which can start to border on love, if not fully become that. People begin to love you because you heard them. You understood them in an educated way. You empathize with them. But lastly, it gave you the opportunity to develop yourself as a leader, whether it's yourself to become a better version of you, or you want to take it even further and to lead those people that you are being educated by and about, and that you're empathetic with, and you come with a solution for them, and you lead them towards that solution. Delicious. All right, I'll summarize it this way. It's hard to be a great listener because we want to be heard, so we speak. However, if we want to really matter and be loved, then the most important skill to develop is the art of being a great listener. When we listen, we learn, we empathize, and when we know how other people really feel, we can lead them to where they want to be. Ultimately, because of that, we can self-fulfill and really matter. All of this by listening first. All right, remember now, you can take immediate action to get moving in a better direction because we take all the notes from each episode and post them at freethinkingtools.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen, or find us on any of our social media channels for the bonus section, so that you don't miss out on any of the episodes, okay? We'd also appreciate if you join our mission of becoming people for others and share our content with other people just like you so that they get this help if it's something that you think they need. Now, remember this. I say it all the time when I sign off. Nobody's coming for you. Nobody. So go get to work on yourself and a better plan for your life. And we will see you in the next episode to help you do just that. Thanks again.